Welcome all. Hope all of you are doing well and safe. This video is for those who want to learn Linux. Our next command is chmod. Chmod stands for change mode. The change mode command is used to change the permissions of a file or directory. In this, for example, here before going to change mode, we'll see some details here. Here the first column represents the permissions. Second column tells us about number of files or directories. In this case, it is a file, that is it, by it is showing 1. If it is a directory, like how many number of files or directories within this directory, it will show that number. Here it is showing 4. That means files and folders total 4 are there in this directory. So it will tell about the number of files or folders count. Third column is the user who has the permissions to this file or directory. Fourth one tell us about the group who has the permissions to the file or a directory. In this case, we don't have any groups here. That's why it is showing username alone. Fifth one tell about the size of a file or a directory. Sixth one tell us about the last modification time or a date. Last modified date of a file or a directory. Last column tell us about file name or a directory name. Here permissions related information we can see on a first column. In the first column, the first character will tell us about whether it is a file or a directory. Here in this case, it is showing hyphen. That means it is a file. If it is a directory, it will show as a D. See here in this case, it is showing D. The first character is showing as a small d. That means it is a directory. So here all these are directories. That is why it is showing for all these first character showing as a D. Here on top of all these are all files. That is why it is showing hyphen. These are all files. The last one also is file. That is why it is showing hyphen here. So in this permission section, the first character tells us about whether it is a file or a directory. So now we'll move on to the next. The same section, the next 3 characters tell us about owner permissions or user permission. Next 3 characters tell about group permission. The next 3 characters tell us about others permissions of file or a directory. If it is in this case, it is a directory. So here also for the first character tell us about a directory or a file. So it is a directory. The next 3 characters tell us about owner permissions to this directory. The next 3 characters tell us about group permissions to this directory. Next 3 characters tell us about other members permissions to this directory. Here in the permission section, we'll be seeing either R or W or X. These 3 characters only will be see under this permission section, from second characters to last character in permission section. So R represents read access, W represents write axis, X represent execution axis, execution permission, write permission, read permissions. Hyphen represents no permissions, permission denied. So here for app.log file, owner have a full permission. Full permission means owner having read access, write access and execution access. Also group also having full permissions. Full permissions means read access, write access, execution access. And others having read only access to the app.log file. They don't have write permission and they don't have execution permission. So for example, if we are seeing here, we are seeing R-X. That means this is the others section. So others having read access to directory 2 and they don't have a write permissions and they have a execution permissions to directory 2. So here they have a read permission. They don't have a write permission, but they have a execution permission as well. And if you see for directory 1, others, if you see this is the others section. So in others, for others, they have a read permission and they don't have a write permission. They don't have a execution permissions to directory 1. So while giving permissions to a file or a directory, we will be using numbering system. So numbering system means like so here we are using RWX, right? So for each character they have their own number. So here it is showing nothing. Nothing means usually it's a 0. And if you want to give execution permissions alone, then we'll give 1. If you want to give write permissions, we have to give 2. Read permissions, we have to give 4. If you want to give write and execution, we have to give 3. So like that numbering system will be there. So for understanding more about this numbering system, we'll go to my website. You can see more details over there and we can understand easily as well. Here chmod command stands for change mode, and chmod command is used to change the permissions of a file or directory. If we come down, we have seen this detailed explanation. You can go through this. Zero means no writes, 1 means execution only, 2 means write only permissions, 3 means the combination of these two. That's why it's 3. 3 means for execution permission and write permission. So both will be having execute and write. The 4 stands for 4 is for read only. The 5 is for read and execute permissions. The combination of 4 plus 1. That means 5. That means read and execution permissions. 6 means read and write permission. 7 means full permissions. That means read, write, execution. So you can also see the numbering system, how the 7 came. 4 plus 2 plus 1. That means 7. This is how we'll give permissions to a file or a directory. So we'll give numbers. So number is means we'll give any one of these number. So if you give 7, it means full permissions. If you give 6, read and write permission. If you give 5, read and execute permission, like that. If you give 2, it will be write permission. Write permission. If you give 1, execution only permission. So now we'll go to Linux and we'll see how we'll give practically. Now I will try to give full permissions to app.log file. So chmod for first one is for user, that means owner. For owner we are giving 7, that means owner will be having full permissions. Second one is group, so second one also I am giving 7, that means 7 group also will be having full permission. Third one is other section, others also will be having full permission. For which file we need to give, we need to give that, whether a file or a directory. In this case I am trying to give app.log file. So before I press enter, if you observe, currently for app.log file owner have a full permission. It means owner have a RWX. Group also have a full permission, that means RWX. But others have only read permissions. They don't have a write permission. They don't have a execution permissions. After pressing this, so the permissions will be changed. Now the permissions will be changed. To see that, ls-l. See, earlier others was having read only permission. They don't have a write permission and execution permission. Now others having full permissions. Similar way, now let's take example like we don't want to give any permissions to others. So chmod for user, for a owner will be giving full permission, for a group also will be giving full permissions, for others we don't want any permissions, that means 0 app.log, press enter, let's say -l. See now the result. See, others won't have any permissions to this app.log file. So give a 0 means no writes, that means no read access, no write access, no execution access. Or if you want to give execution permission alone for others, now we'll see. Now others having execution permission alone. This way we can change the permissions. As of now we are changing the permissions to other group only, others only. Now we'll change the permissions for a group as well. So we'll give 7 for owner, so we are giving full permissions to owner, and for group we want to give read only permissions, that means 4 means read only permission, and for others we don't want any permissions, that means we are giving 0, that means no permissions to others. We need to give file name. See, here we are giving full permissions to owner, read only permissions to group, and no write permission, no execution permission. And the last 3 represents others. Others have no write, no read, no write, no execution. So nothing is there for others. Similar way, we can change the permissions to directories as well. To change the permissions to directory, chmod. Here we want to give full permissions to owner. We want to give read-only permissions to group. Read-only means we need to give 4, and we don't want to give any permissions to others. That means 0, and we need to give the directory. We'll give dir5. You see, D stands for directory. And the first 3 represents, after directories, the first 3 represents owner permissions. Owner have a full permissions. Here first 3 characters after D represents owner permissions. Owner have a full permissions. And next 3 represents group permissions. Group have a read-only permissions. The final last 3 represents others permissions. Others don't have any permissions. No read access, no write access, no execution access. This is how we'll be changing permissions to a file or directory. If you don't want to give full permissions to owner as well, we can do that one as well. So chmod, we don't want to give execution permissions to owner, then we can omit execution permissions. We can give read and write access, that means 6. For a group, we don't want to give write and execution permissions. We want to give only read permissions, that means 4. For others, we don't want to give any access, that means we can give 0. Next, we have to give a file name or a directory name. So here we'll give file. See, here owner having read and write permissions but no execution permissions to app.log file. Group having read permissions alone, no write access, no read, no execution access, only read access to group for app.log file. For others, there is no access, because for others we gave 0, that's why they don't have any access. For a group we gave 4, that's why others having only read access, no write and no execution. For owner, we gave a 6, that means read and write, no execution permissions to app.log file. This is how we can give permissions to a file or a directory